Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of All About People Sessions. My name is Irene, and I am the Cultural Ambassador here at Imperiall. Today with us, we have a wonderful young woman called Awilda Reinoso Lopez. She has 10 years of professional experience working and advocating for systemic change, social justice, and equity on behalf of the BIPOC community through education policy, strategic planning, grant making, community empowerment, economic mobility, leadership, representation, and advocacy. Welcome, Awilda.
Gracias. Thank you for having me.
Es un placer. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me what's your background, your ethnic background, and are you from here, from Rhode Island? Tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, my name is Awilda Reinoso Lopez. I am originally from Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is a small city of immigrants full of Dominican. My family originally migrated from the Dominican Republic in the 90s, I would say 80s, here, and I am a proud daughter of immigrants. I am actually first generation to do, I would say, everything in my family. I'm the first to graduate high school. I'm the first to get my bachelor's. I studied economics at Clark University. And then I decided to go on for my master's in urban education policy at Brown University. And so being the first in my family has been something that has been very challenging, but very, I would say, bittersweet, right? To be able to be an example for those who are, behind me and looking up to me. And also figuring out how to bring my authentic self in everything that I do, whether if it's my personal or my professional career. I love talking about social justice. It is my jam. I love thinking about systems and what makes the world go round and how can people live at least a decent life, right? I am all about community and healing, and wellness is a very passion of mine that I try to embed into my social justice work as well, to be able to continue being able to say that, we're able to live a decent life, right? I think everybody's well-being should be first and foremost. And so it starts with social justice, especially because, not just because I'm a Latina, right? And, where I come from, but also just creating the world that I would want to see.
And I love that you mentioned that you combine education, policy, and wellness. What inspired you to combine these things in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first time I was introduced to the political world, I would say I was 13 years old. And I did it through canvassing. I remember I was part of after-schooling program. I'm a big champion after-school program. If it wasn't for that, I would not have been exposed to, other activities that allowed me to pursue my education. My mom is, low income, working class family, and my dad too, right, working in factories tirelessly. And so they really depended on after-school programming. And it was through after-school programming like Upward Bound that has allowed me to learn about canvassing. And so I saw politicians from my city who looked like me, spoke Spanish and English, advocating for their people. And that's where my interest peaked, right? Not necessarily that I wanted to be a politician, because even till today, people ask me, like, are you ever going to run for office? But just really being exposed to that has allowed me to be like, wow, like, what are the systems, and policies that are in place that actually impact people's lives, right? I started with that question. I went to school for economics because I wanted to know what makes the world go round, right? I think economics is a great way to learn about economic systems and, the different eras of them and why they exist, right? What is the purpose of, for example, capitalism? When I learned that the goal is just profit, I was like, what? It's not putting people first. This is crazy. Your well-being. And so once I got into my postgraduate career, I was actually approached by a principal at a charter school saying, like, listen, I know you have an economic background, but I saw that you tutored kids throughout college. Would you be interested in doing the administration work, figuring, helping Latino parents who are part of the charter school system really learn how to advocate for their children in their education? And that's when I started, like, noticing the gaps that existed. How many parents didn't know how to navigate the education system. And so that's why I have been in the education system for 10 years. My career has been focused on policy change within education, and I just recently pivoted last year over to public policy, where we do a lot of advocacy work for the Latino population in Rhode Island, really focusing on stimulating public discourse. So that Latinos could be seen and impacted in a positive way in the legislative bills that are being presented in Rhode Island.
Amazing. What made you take that shift? Like, what was the thing that moved you from that role in education to go to social change?
I think, my time in education, the reason why I did it was because I believe that it is like the foundation of everything, and it's, a great vehicle to change people's lives, right? My parents instilled in me the importance of education, and that was the vehicle of change. It was like that golden ticket out of poverty, even though we can have another 3-hour discussion that's not necessarily true, right? But
I understand.
Yeah, that's a perception.
Yeah.
And then I had this moment where I was doing a lot of internal work, and I was really soul searching, is what people say. And I realized, I'm like, okay, what am I passionate about? What will make me want to wake up and do this thing every day, right? What is something that is like my non-negotiable? And so I realized, I'm like, I love helping people. I cannot see myself in a career that does not help people. And so I was like, okay, but what I'm also good at, like, what are the skills that I'm good at? And I'm like, I'm really good at data, and like really demystifying that and breaking it down and making it adjustable to your average American, right? I wanted to be able to have my 94-year-old grandma understand that, right? And then I was like, I really love wellness, right? I come from a generation of wellness people. Like, I learned that my great-grandfather was a shaman in the Dominican Republic, but they didn't tell me that until I was like 28 years old,
oh my
right?
God. So it is in your ancestors.
Yeah, it is. It's part of my ancestry DNA, and I really started doing that soul searching with my family tree, really figuring out who we are, right? What does that mean? What are my values, right? Like, what is it in the world that I want to live in? And what is my purpose? And so I realized that I could mix the social justice component, working for systemic change, right? For marginalized communities who are left voiceless, right? And also doing the wellness component, where I have an approach where it is individual, but also community. I believe in community. I am a big fan of like people like Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, a lot of Black women who have led this work into that, right? I think it's really hard to exist if you don't have a life where you feel like you have access to basic needs, right?
Yes.
It's really hard for you to be present to figuring out what you want to do with your life, right? You're not in survival mode. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be a part of a world where people are no longer in survival mode, and they're able to dabble it into what they're passionate about.
Is that what you talk about when you talk about decolonized mindfulness?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So once I decided that I wanted to do wellness, and it was during COVID, actually, when the world shut down, because I had time to be with myself. I had time to think. I was no longer in the hustle and working, these crazy hours. And I had a dream where my great-grandfather visited me. And mind you, I never met this man in my life. And then he was just like, all he said in Spanish was, "Continúa mi legado." And I called my mom and I said, I don't know, this man with long hair, very indigenous, like looking self told me just continue my legacy. I'm like, what's that about? And she's like, oh, mija, I'm sorry to tell you now, pero your great-grandfather era un curandero en la República Dominicana.
I got chills.
Él ayudaba gente a sanarse en forma con la naturaleza, like the nature. Sí. And so I was like, wow, it just hit me. And it just I got downloads right there in that. And so then I decided to go for my Reiki certification. Okay. And through my Reiki certification, if you guys are not familiar, Reiki is a Japanese technique where it's energy healing and restores balance. Yes. And so I saw that a lot of white cis people were teaching that. There was nobody that looked like me, spoke like me, and I was like, wait, this feels like off, right? Yeah. And so I was like, we need to decolonize our cultural traditions and make it and normalize. It's okay to practice whatever it is that you may believe in. I respect all beliefs, right? And so I was like, you know what? We need to decolonize that because we come from countries where dictators were in place, right?
Yes.
And it's a very, very colonized mindset. And the decolonization comes with sitting with the discomfort of what you are as a Latino, right?
Yes.
And really looking into that. And I wanted our people, especially the Latino community, BIPOC community, to have the tools to be able to heal themselves, right? And being able to talk about, their stories and their trauma, and being able to have the tools to deregulate. Like, for example, there's days I'm sitting in my office in my chair and I'm like, wait, I'm not even breathing right? How do you teach people to notice that and to slow down and be like, okay, take a step back, take a deep breath, take a second, and then keep going? How do you become present in your day-to-day life, right? So I was very much interested in mixing the, what they say woo-woo stuff with the evidence-based stuff, which is mindfulness and meditation, nature walking, right? Things that are just easy to implement in your day-to-day life. And so that is what I'm passionate about as well, is on an individual level for wellness, but also on a community, right, as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love how you can combine, it's like a Venn diagram of the things that you wanted to do and the things that you get paid for, because we also have to survive. So I love that you found your way, el camino. Hermoso, me encanta. So you were just saying about telling our stories. So you are very passionate when you talk, and I love how contagious it is. Can you share how storytelling can impact healing and empowerment?
Yeah, I think storytelling is such a powerful tool that should be accessible to everyone. I think the ability to sit down and really journal about your life, right? It is something that can be painful, right? To walk through the things that you've been through, right? But also very empowering at the same time, because you are inspiring younger generations, right? To be seen and heard and be like, wow, I also went through something similar to that. And look at the other side, right? Look at the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I think it's a very painful and healing experience at the same time, and it's needed, right? I would not know the story of my grandmother, right? Unless if I asked her, what is your story, right? And I think I'm privileged to be able to do that, right? To have a grandparent that can tell me about, their back in the days, the fact that she was able to live through the Trujillo era, right? But it wasn't until I started opening up myself, and I would say this, I'm an open book. Like, I will tell you, like how did you do that? Like, how did you... I'll give you the recipe that I use. I don't know if it'll work for you, but here you go.
But this is what I do.
Yeah, I really do believe in sharing. And my approach is very collaborative, right? I think storytelling exercises and writing your narrative empowers yourself, but also the people with you. And it's like a ripple effect, right? Because now you're seeing wow, our people are resilient, right? These things that have been done to us, right? But what is it telling us, right? What are the lessons behind that? And I think being able to shift that paradigm and that narrative is important. And it has to come from yourself. And so that's why I love using that tool. I love hosting little sessions where we have storytelling and we simply have tea and relax in an atmosphere where we slow down and really do that. Because we really do live in a society where we forget people's stories, right? Behind.
Absolutely. And it's so demanding, always of our time and our attention. And we're always constantly being bombarded with more information. So taking a minute to sit down and sip a cup of tea and tell your stories. Also, it builds community. You feel like you're no longer alone in your experience. And I think that's one of the most important things. Just like representation matters. Knowing that somebody else went through what you went through and talking about, like when I sit down and talk to other immigrants that have come to the United States running away from, even from my own country, from Venezuela, they had different experience than I did. But even though we're coming from the same country, seeing what happened to them and sharing what happened to me, I feel like enriched both of our lives, It's a very powerful tool. And I see that you're not working for policy, right? Your policy.
The Latino Policy Institute.
Wonderful. Tell me, what's your role in there?
Yeah, so I'm currently the policy associate, and so what I focus on is advocating for the Latino population through the policies that would impact their lives in a variety of numerous ways. So we stimulate public discourse, right? Our three main priorities right now is education, healthcare, and economic equity. And so we focus on a whole of different projects, right? We work with different organizations to either write reports or answer research questions that are very important. We also go to the State House. You will see us there from January to June, right? Really advocating with other sister organizations on the importance of passing certain bills or maybe amending a certain bill, right? To make sure that our people are being a part of that, right? So I think it's a beautiful and an honor thing, to represent the Latino community, because like we talked about this, it's like the Latino culture is not a monolith, and we all different, cultures, we all speak different dialects, we all have different education levels, our immigration stories, right? I feel like that is something that we're bounded with by Together, like that immigration part of it. And so I'm fortunate to be a part of an organization that's nonpartisan, to be able to share what is research saying, right? And ways that we can actually impact people's lives for the better.
And do you combine all those things? Do you think that education, healthcare, and economic equity, how do you implement these things? Like, how do you provide these for the community?
Yeah, that's a great question. We decided to choose those three main areas because we feel like it's a big impact on our people, right? The importance, not to take away the importance of like housing or all the other things. They're all equally important, and it's all interconnected. But we were very much in a position where we can have our voices amplified in those areas. And so what we do is, even though we don't directly see our impact because policy is more behind the scenes, right? And we don't directly work with the community the way other organizations like Progreso Latino does, right? We're working in tandem with them, right? They have the grassroots upper hand, and we are more on the policy side, where we can speak to people who are, state representatives or state senators on like, listen, like I saw that you care about economic equity, for example, housing, affordable housing. It's not affordable for our people. They're paying more than 1/3 of their wages. Is insanity, right? And so housing is, for example, it is a right. It's a human right. It's not a commodity, right? And so we're able to, work with legislators who actually have full-time jobs, right? This is just a part-time job, right? To help pass bills that are actually going to help people and make sure that it's going to be done in an equitable way, right? And not leaving people behind. There is so much work to be done in these areas. And I can, talk endlessly about healthcare and accessibility, right? Medicaid, Medicare, right? The complexity of that, right? Also the immigration policies, right? The fact that DACA and all these other very important policies are going to be talked upon now, and they're being talked upon now. We're in election cycle, 14 days until you have to vote. But these are things that are just very important for us to have a say in and be a part of, to help create that change that we want to see. Because I think people forget that policy impacts your life. I take the time with my loved ones to sit them down and explain to them how that policy impacts them. Remember, people are just so busy in their day-to-day life, especially those who are in survival mode. They don't have the luxury to sit there and
like
think about that, right? But me, that this is my job, I can, right? And bringing that, at their disposal is important, right? I think it's important to be able to connect with your people and be able to, whether if you speak Spanish or whatever, bilingualism now is a thing, right? Like that's the way my brain thinks. It's important to be able to communicate that and the importance of that. And I love planting seeds, right? I think planting seeds is important, even if the person doesn't care about it, but you never know.
But it's there.
Yeah, it's there.
Maybe it's going to come up in a different conversation. They're going to be like, oh, that's what Awilda was talking about.
Yeah, and they can water that, it's like a plant. They can water that, right? And it continues to grow. So that's the way I see it. And so dabbling into public policy now has definitely been a privilege, even though I focus on education. But education is very holistic too. It's very interconnected to all these other systems. So a lot of the skill sets that I had were very transferable. And I was like, okay, this makes sense, because I love thinking about things from a holistic point of view and how everything is interconnected. Like I literally have like a web diagram in my head, how everything is connected to one another. And at the center of that is the person, the communities that are being impacted by those things.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you faced trying to work with policy advocating? That's
a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges is how do you communicate to people who have a different belief or a different interpretation of a bill or, different view, right? Should we say that's not similar to mine? And how do we sit in the same table and create, something that is compromisable, that is not going to be inequitable, but it's also like not gonna, I would say not hinder whatever it is that they're trying to push forward, right? And I think that's been challenging because I'm someone who's very passionate about what I do and my people, and I want the best for our people. But it's been very eye-opening how I can work with all different walks of life, all different point of views on these issues, and being able to see like, okay, this is where we can meet halfway.
So there's compromising.
There's compromising, and it's a marathon, right? Not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think about the work I do is very slow. It is government work is very, very slow, right?
Yeah.
And you can get, kind of frustrated. Like, I want to see the changes already, right? But again, it's like planting those seeds that are needed in order for that to grow. So yeah, I think that's been a challenge, right? Because when you're so passionate about what you do and your people and you want the best for your people, you're going to do whatever it takes for that. But there's going to be times where you're going to have to compromise, and you got to figure out how, like, what is it? Like, in what areas is it going to be, right?
And what is non-negotiable?
And non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very difficult place to be in, because I feel like we live in a society where everything is a priority, right? Everything impacts everything. And so, I think that will always be a challenge, but I'm always up for it, right? I think being at that table is important, and being compassionate, right? I think listening to all sides is important, in order for you to reach an amicable, agreement, right? And so I am excited to create whatever it is going to be for the future, right? Whatever is going to be impacted in the next decade. I love innovative ideas, and so.
That's amazing. Just listening to you talking so passionate about all that makes me want to join. Let's make changes. Do you have somebody in your life? Because, you being the first generation, even going to high school and graduating high school, is there anybody like in your family or in your life that has been like your biggest supporter, or like a mentor, or somebody that you knew that you could look up to or ask for advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was very fortunate to have a big family. My grandmother had 26 children.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so imagine all the cousins that I have.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so there's a lot of us who are around the same age group. There's older ones who did graduate before me in high school, my cousins, and having them. I am so lucky to have a prima hermana is what I call. It's like a cousin who's your sister that y'all grew up together. Her name is Arinelli, and she was the first to graduate in her family from high school. She's like 2 years older than me. And just having her there, and like till this day we get it. Like we both graduated college, we both have our masters. She's in the social work field, clinical field, right? And that's also very social
very
community oriented.
Yes.
And I've also been very much involved in the policy and community-oriented work. And so till this day, we're just so lucky to have each other. And we call each other. We can talk about anything and just inspire one another. I was also very fortunate to have a very supportive system, my mom and my dad, even though they had no idea what anything meant, right? Because they didn't even get to graduate past 5th grade. They gave me that support and that like confidence and like, you can do it. There's something so powerful. Like when you're like, it's your first semester of undergrad and you're like calling your mom and your dad like, I want to drop out. I don't think I can do this because of the culture shock. And like everybody has Range Rovers and their parents pay for their rent and like, that's not my story. I had 3 jobs, and so just to hear their voice and say, tú sí puedes, like, tú puedes, dale pa'lante, dale con todo, right? Dominicans say that, dale con todo, right? And so I think that voice in my head has allowed me to be where I am today. and continuing that, right? You know, they did what they could, right? They did the best they could with the information that they had, the tools that they had.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's crazy that they came here and then I know any lick of English, didn't have no education, and they built a family. They are homeowners, right? That is wild to me, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's my turn to create another part of the legacy where my future children are gonna have a different, you know, upbringing. So I think I'm fortunate to have that. And then I also have other mentors who were teachers who were also of color who very much stayed in touch with. Like if I contemplated a decision about a class or should I get my master's or not, like I had them. And so I definitely am fortunate to have them till today in my life.
That's beautiful. I love that you have your family support.
Yeah.
Even though they, like you said, maybe they don't understand what you're going through because they didn't, but they believe in you. And having that support, it's a lot. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you think has been the most rewarding part of this journey that you've done here? You know, again, first generation doing a lot of things for your family.
Yeah. I think the most rewarding is doing the hard things and being able to see that I can do the hard things, right? I never in my wildest dream would I've thought that I would, you know, have a degree in economics where there's not a lot of women in that field, especially women of color who are, you know, doing that kind of work or in policy, right? Or in my wildest dream, go to Brown University, an Ivy League institution, right? Right, but I think the most rewarding is being so sure of myself and the self-awareness that I have that will allow me to be the kind of person that I want to be in the world, right? I think they say that it's like, be the change that you want to be, you want to see in the world, right?
Yes,
that quote,
yes,
I think
totally.
it's very true. It is very true. You got to look at yourself first in order for you to then do that ripple effect, right?
Exactly.
And kind of inspire people. So I am fortunate, and I think the most rewarding is that I'm able to have hard conversations with myself and be very self-aware for me to know, like, this is what I want to do, or no, this is not what I want to do, right? I think being so sure in what you want is so powerful. And I think that's the most rewarding for sure. And I'm excited to see what I'm able to create now that I'm like finally honed in what I want to be doing.
Yeah, and you're making change. So what can we expect from Awilda in the next, 5 years?
Oh, gotta love that question. I feel like I'm in a job interview.
What are your strengths?
Right, yeah.
Tell me 3 weaknesses.
Yeah. That's a great question. So I want to continue growing my brand. It's called Amorosa Wellness. I created that for people to really work on an individual level, but also on a community healing level, where I'll offer mindfulness and meditation services and Reiki and sound healing for people to understand how wellness is and how to implement that in their day-to-day life. I am fascinated with that idea of helping people navigate that. And so I'm going to focus a lot of my time on that while also continuous to do my policy advocacy, which is my 9-to-5 job, as well simultaneously, because I feel like putting those two things together is where I want to be, in a place where we center wellness, right? We're centering mental health, you know, the importance of that. Also, the mind-body connection is so important. And so I want to be in those spaces where we're doing innovative work for Black, Indigenous, and Latino community on that. I want to be in the forefront of doing research of that work and also implementing that work as well. So I'm excited to be able to help people live that present life and be okay with themselves in their mind, right? Because we're the ones that are in our minds 24/7.
That is true.
And how do you regulate your nervous system, right? How do you take a pause, right? How do you live, like, what's the rush, right? I want people to be like, I'm going to do it at my pace, right? And so I want people to be able to have that peace of mind, right? And have those tools at their disposal, right? That toolkit. I think social emotional learning is very important. I don't think that you doing yoga and meditating is going to push away racism and all these social justice issues that are happening, right? I think we need to be productive citizens and participate in society for us to see the change. And also, you have to take care of yourself and your well-being, right? In order for you to be, you know, the wife or the mother or the daughter or the leader, you know, that you want to see, right? You got to pour into yourself. And that's what I'm excited about Amorosa, is being able to grow that and expand that and inspire people through that.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to see all the wonderful things that you're going to do because you're already doing all the wonderful things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us today, Awilda. It really was a pleasure talking to you. You're admirable, and this is amazing. I really can't wait to see all the things you're going to accomplish.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Of course, it was a pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for watching this new episode of All About People Sessions. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Oh my God, you did wonderful.
I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna fluster on some words.